OST 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? We're rolling out of here today on episode 398 of The Hodder Show. All right, real quick. Come here. Listen. I know. Okay, I know it has been longer than a minute. And I know the last time you guys heard from me here, I said I was going to try and do monthly content. And that did not happen. 2024 was a fantastic year. And here today, I'm going to talk a whole lot about it with my boy Josh from Still Loading Podcast. We'll get to that in a second. This is like the preamble for the intro here. Things didn't work out the way I thought they would. That's okay. Nothing bad. I've just been very busy. And I am sorry for that. But I promise you guys right here, right now, that I am not going to go like 5 or 6 or 7 months again without an episode. Because I got stuff planned for the year. I'm very excited. And I promise you, you are at least going forward now going to get some kind of a monthly episode from me here. Probably more, but that's at least my guarantee because I got things I want to do this year in regards to the Hodder Show. And I'm very, very excited about that. I thank you guys so very much for the patience. And for those of you who reached out to me asking, where's the Hodder Show? What's going on? We're back in business, baby. I'm here even though I am still pretty freaking sick. I've been sick literally for the entirety of the holidays, but that's beside the point. All that crap out of the way. Welcome back to the Hodder Show. I am thrilled to be here with you guys as we get ready to dive into the yearly tradition here on the Hodder Show, in which I do a retrospective with my boy Josh from the Still Loading Podcast. He is an old friend of mine. I've been friends with Josh for 9 years now, something like that. And this has been a tradition we've done at least for the last, 5 or 6 years, something like that. So I figured this would be a fantastic opportunity to start to kind of get back into the swing of things here with the Hodder Show. I'm very excited. I hope that you guys had a fantastic 2024 and you're ready for an even better 2025. I can't wait. A lot of cool things that are happening. Of course, in the TJ Hodder camp, Tapes of Trepidation, my horror narration podcast, still going strong, still having a ton of fun. This episode here, this retrospective is mainly for me going to focus on that just because a lot didn't happen here with the Hodder Show. And actually, while I was on air, I really, you hear a couple times, I kind of realized how long it actually had been since July. Time flew by really quickly for me. From the last time you guys heard from me here. And when I kind of realized it's been 4 months, I was like, well, let's just finish the year off and see kind of what happens. I did have plans to have some kind of a Christmas episode and then this, but I was actually very sick over the holidays. You can probably still hear my voice. I'm still a little funky, but I wanted to get this out to you guys here because I had such a blast talking with Josh, as I always do. And I know this is a tradition here on the Horror Show that I always look forward to doing. So without further ado, we're going to jump into my conversation with Josh Covel from Still Loading Podcast as we dive in to the Hodder Show and the Still Loading Podcast's 2024 retrospective. Let's get into it.
But of course, as we do every year, I talk to my buddy TJ Hodder from the Hodder Show, my brother from the Great White North, who surfed down on a riptide of maple syrup on a surfboard made of goddamn moose antlers, and he surfed across the Great Lakes. Somehow they were all maple syrup now instead of just water, but it's a maple syrup lake. And then he got to the other side, wrestled a bear, skinned it, and then used that as a way, as like a proto sled on the grass. Because for some reason, he actually, you know what? He took some fucking tree wax and waxed the bottom of that shit and then just slid the bearskin the whole way down here to Pennsylvania so we could record this podcast as the most cross country Canadian American podcast you can ever get. TJ Hodder is back on the show. TJ, how are you doing?
I wrestled a bear once.
That's that is a band.
You lost me at the waxing of the. I started laughing so hard I couldn't even think straight. I was muted. Oh my goodness, buddy! It is always the most fun to see you and talk with you on these. I look forward to these every single year. Every time I get that text or Discord message, hey, we should probably start thinking about the. We were actually a little behind this year getting in touch about it because usually it's like September, November, we start talking about it.
Well, normally it's like November, and I'm like, oh, we should probably schedule that. But this year, it's just been, there's been a lot of life changes for both of us. There's been a lot of life changes, I feel like, outside of the podcast. So it's just been a lot of stuff going on. It's been hard. Like I'm finally getting back into the swing of things with my own show after moving and everything, which I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but it just, a lot of stuff changed. I'm actually amazed I was able to keep the show weekly during that entire time, having to plan the move and everything. So that's one, we always like to touch on things we're proud of. That's one thing I'm proud of. I somehow kept the show weekly during that.
I am proud of you too, because I did not. Which I'll get into, but yeah, no, you've been killing it, man. I mean, you always kill it. The 10 it was the 10th anniversary this year, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah. Like 10th year anniversary of Still Learning podcast. You had that great kind of, I want to say Q&A episode, but it was kind of like you had people on, doing the stuff.
10 guests for 10 years.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for reminding me. I feel like that was another lifetime ago. It's been I haven't had a bad year or anything. It's just like, switching to a full overnight job and schedule has been great in a lot of ways, but also it's like, it feels like that was a year and a half ago.
Were you working overnight when we did the little recording snippet?
Yeah,
for that.
I think I had just started, but now it's like I'm fully like I'm up till 5 or 6 a.m. every night now, like full overnight schedule, which in a lot of ways I love it, but it does not lend itself well to doing an interview podcast, which is why the Hodder Show has been on hiatus since I don't even remember. It's been a little while.
You know what? I can while you're talking, I can look up when your last episode came out.
I'm actually looking to myself, but I appreciate that. So I did a little comeback episode.
The state of the podcast.
Yeah,
4
that
months
was
ago.
supposed. That was
more
supposed
than that.
To
it was
be,
July.
Yeah, that was it. Really? Oh my gosh,
July 18th.
In July. Wow, that was supposed to be like, hey guys, I said, and then I'm going to start doing monthly episodes, and that just didn't happen. I started off the year pretty good though. We did our retrospective. Then I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow. That's depressing.
Hey,
I've had 9 episodes of my podcast this year. Well, my other podcast.
Your other podcast. You've been putting, like, the thing is that you can't always focus on everything all at once. And you have been enjoying your other podcast, Tapes of Trepidation, a lot more. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely, you still like the Hodder Show, but when it comes down to it, your prioritization is Trepidation, and there's nothing, Tapes of Trepidation. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's healthy. Instead of trying to kill yourself, trying to manage 2 different shows, you're going with what you love right now. And I think that's a much smarter choice.
Right. And I agree. And that's why I just made the decision that, like, you know what, if, Tapes of Trepidation it's been a long time coming. It has been an absolute labor of love. I've never felt more fulfilled creatively than I do doing this podcast. And it's wild. Even back in the Podbeard days, when I was doing the Hodder Show and 2 Guys in a Game and Mics and Beers and like all this other stuff, like I still feel more creatively fulfilled now than I ever did in those time periods. And, it's like, okay, if I can't give my all to the Hodder Show, because scheduling interviews right now is an absolute nightmare. So it's like
it's impossible for you with
Yeah.
if you can only like we're recording this in an afternoon. I actually I actually took off work not just for this. I had to clean the house for the holidays because we're having family come over. But like so it just kind of worked out that this all like I took off for this, and then also I'm like, well, I can actually take care of some personal stuff around the house too. So it worked out well. But like it's like not everyone can have that flexible schedule. Not everyone can record in the afternoon. So I totally understand why the interview podcast it's hard to do with your current schedule.
Yeah. And, with with tapes, I record anytime I want. I do whatever I want. I can still have guests on for guest narrations and stuff. We saw you hop on there at one point. Like that was cool. And it's like just in a time period where I could have very easily just not done anything, and that very easily could have happened. It's like I started this out, this is still the first year of the pod and stuff, but like it's very much just it's just fun, man. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like my graphics guy, shout out to Jason from Jaybird Digital Arts. He sent me a message there probably about a month ago. And he said, can I just say that like, I can hear in your voice how much fun you're having.
Mm-hmm.
Like as someone who really knows you, like you are having so much fun doing this. And if you listen to the Patreon, like it's like a behind the scenes podcast Patreon where it's kind of sort of like the Hodder Show style stuff, but for Tapes of Trepidation.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of still scratches that itch, It's like, if you listen to that, it's like, like this guy just loves doing this. Like there's no way around it. So it's been fun and it's been great. It's been different. And realizing I've only had, 8 or 9 episodes of the Hodder Show. Obviously that's wild to think about, but I've had, weekly content, episode 44. And then I've had a bunch of bonus content, including currently I'm in the 12 scares of Christmas, which I'm right smack in the middle of as we record this, which is 12 days of daily narrations. So like I've done a lot of content this year and it's been fun, and I'm excited to get back to the Hodder Show next year. Like this episode will be on the Hodder Show, obviously, to end off the year, Hi everybody. I'll have an intro or something.
Hi everybody, it's been 7 months, but here I am. Or 5 months.
But yeah, anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah, just it's otherwise like, I'm what do the kids say these days? I'm Gucci.
What?
I'm Gucci. Is that a word still? Do people still say that? I don't know.
I have no idea. Dude,
I
don't know.
Skibbity.
Oh, fucking skibbity toilet. God damn it. I was talking to someone actually about that, where it's like I can't stand that that's a meme, but at the same time, I am not going to be like that's dumb, because I know the shit I laughed at when I was like a teenager and in college, and like it was shit like that. Like if Skibbity Toilet came out when I was in college and that was like the popular thing, you bet your ass I would have found it to be the funniest fucking thing in the world. But now I'm a 35-year-old man and I'm like, well, that's not part of my childhood, you son of a bitch. So then it just kind of seems weird to me. It's fine though. Like I've never watched any of the Skibbity Toilet shorts. It is what it is. It's funny though. I started playing World of Warcraft again, and I did a World of Warcraft series this year. It just came out the finale came out a couple weeks ago at the time this episode comes out. And I started playing it for that. And one of the most annoying things about World of Warcraft right now, I'm playing WoW Classic. So it's like the original version of it that came out in like 2004, and everyone and their mother will just randomly invite you to their guild. Like, because what happens is you can see a list of like people on the server you're on, and you can look for people who aren't part of guilds, and you can just like send them invites blindly. I'm pretty sure, because I will get invited to so many fucking guilds, and it like without fail, at least once, maybe twice a week, I get invited to Skibbity Toilet as the guild, and I'm like, you fuckers, I don't want to be
Skibbity
part of
Toilet wants you to join their
Toilet.
guild. It's like, no.
So and so wants you to join the guild Skibbity Toilet. I'm like, no, just no. And there's been a couple times I thought people were asking to join groups, and so I'll hit accept, and all of a sudden I'm a part of a guild. I'm like, what the fuck? And I get so mad. Thankfully, I never joined Skibbity Toilet, but I still get mad that I get like tricked into joining a guild. Periodically, I'll get like random private messages saying something like, hey, would you be interested in joining our guild? We're blah, blah, blah. And they're just kind of pitching it. And I don't want to, but I appreciate that a lot more than just suddenly have a fucking pop-up appear on my screen. And I have to be like, okay, is this a group or like, what is this? What am I being asked to join here?
Hey, would you like to join our guild, Rizmaster 69? It's like, no,
Rizmaster
can't say I want to do that.
Oh my god. Yeah, we're here. We've been rambling a bit. We should talk about like what we are. We should dive into what we are here to actually discuss. We're going to be talking about our year in review, like some of our favorite episodes, what our most popular episodes were. I'm not to put you on the spot, TJ. You could probably stick to tapes if you want to, not trying to be insulting towards the Hodder Show.
Probably a good idea.
It's probably a smart choice.
I'm going to touch on a couple things for the Hodder Show, just out of like, out of respect for the
respect.
people.
Thank you for your service.
Year,
that kind
of thing. Thank you for shout out to my boy Zach Smith for single-handedly keeping the Hodder Show alive this year. His episode.
It's funny.
It has promptly made sure that I was on the Good Pods podcast chart all year.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why, but
Good Pods, like no offense if anyone from Good Pods is listening to this, no offense, your app's fine-ish. I have some issues with the actual player, but every time I get a notification like you're number one on these charts, I'm like, I don't understand how. Those charts are only local to just Good Pods.
And no one listens to my podcast on Good Pods because I've gotten that too. I'm like, how does my podcast have any hits on this?
It has nothing to do with downloads. It has everything to do with ratings. How many times someone rates an episode, or how many ratings your show has total. So like I'm number one in retro, just retro, not retro games, just all out retro.
Well, there you go.
Hold on, I will say, because they give you little like badge stickers that you can like put on your website and shit. And that's actually kind of handy because I can make it seem like my podcast is more important than it actually is.
Oh, hell yeah. Listen, when I launched Tapes, I literally was number one in their thing. Like, God, it was like the first week I was like in the top 5 and I was like, so like, I'm not going to lie. That was a pretty good confidence booster. And there's been a couple times I've been rubbing elbows with some of my favorite podcasts. So like, it's cool to see, but then at the same time, it's like, like this is literally just, look at you, number one retro, number one Xbox, number one Nintendo, number one Microsoft. You're just collecting good pod things.
Retro, and I don't understand. It's funny if you click on it though. Like if you click on the number one for top 100 all time Xbox, there's only 34 podcasts, so it's not even top 100. It's top 34.
Oh, I know, brother. I know. Yeah. Listen, the Hodder Show has been at number 71. On the music interviews chart for the entire year, aside from it moved up a few times when I had episodes. But I mean, you guys know that I didn't do anything this year really with the Hodder Show, so I have no idea how it's on that list still. But there must only be 71 music interview podcasts on
Good
active
Pods
on the app because it's still cool. It's like, oh look, I'm on it again. That's exciting. I was also on the iTunes one randomly at number 69 this year, which I thought was hilarious. So
69, baby.
And I was like, again, no one listens to that podcast on Apple, so I don't know how it got there. But anyway,
don't question it.
Yeah, no, I'm just like, oh look, guys, I'm number 69. Isn't that hilarious? Like.
Well, let's go into our top 10 episodes in terms of popularity, like what got the most downloads for the year. So do you have your list ready, TJ?
Yes, Joshua, I do.
All right. So we'll start off with you. What was your 10th most popular episode this year?
Okay, so I did have it ready. There it is. Sorry. Of course. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay.
So professional.
So, my top 10 episodes. Hello and welcome to my top 10 episodes of... No, I'm just kidding.
Welcome to Skibbity Toilets Top 10.
Welcome to Skibbity Toilets top 10 episodes of Anyway, sorry guys. I apologize in advance.
There's just some dude yelling Riz in the background 1,000 times. Riz, Riz, Riz.
It's the Riz Master. Who would like to hear a story about a bridge? Anyway.
I'd be like, what the? Oh, Family Guy. It took me a second.
I went two guys in the game there for a minute.
There you go.
So I'm going to give you guys both mine for YouTube and the actual podcast feed because some of them are so vastly different.
Yeah.
that I feel it is a disservice to these great stories done by some fantastic authors to not give them proper shout outs. So starting off over on YouTube, my number 10 video of the year is actually my most recent full-length episode of Tapes of Trepidation, tape number 44, Cold Storage, which is a really fun story, fun episode. I do a twangy voice, so it's always fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My 10th episode over on the actual podcast feed is tape number 9, The Cold, which is a story about a cold. That's weird. And
the worst part is you can't go into too much detail because you don't want to spoil the story for everyone.
Let's just say I recorded that while I was very, very, very overdosed on NyQuil.
On marijuana.
NyQuil. Yeah, good times. So yeah, that's my. Are we doing like I do my 10, then you do your 10? We do one. How do you want to do this?
I was going to go back and forth.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, cool. So for number 10 over on YouTube, because it is interesting. Before we recorded, you brought up the YouTube thing. I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about that. Like that YouTube will have a complete, because the YouTube views don't get tracked into how long or how many downloads that an episode gets.
Exactly.
That was kind of interesting. So number 10 over on YouTube is episode 312. Now, mind you, this is also like I couldn't group stuff that came out just this year. So some of these things might have come out like the year before. So we're just looking at like from January 1st to December 17th. This is what the most popular episodes were this year. So episode 312, Grand Soul Story, which did come out this year. Grand Soul Story is an indie game that I got a review code for from this game developer Moon Soul Games, and it's like a JRPG inspired type of game. And I did that episode with my buddy Chris from Retro Hangover, who was nice enough I got him a review code as well, and we got to play through this game and talk about it, and it was a lot of fun. Like I had a really good time with it. So I'm actually kind of happy that one did as well as it did. I have a very small YouTube presence. I have less than 200 subscribers, but still I was pretty content with that. So that is my number 10 for YouTube. And for the podcast, number 10 for the main feed, it is episode number 330, Toe Jam and Earl, which came out in October of this year with my buddy Justin. That was part of my backlog month where I started it last year. That was actually I don't know if I mentioned it in the 2023 review episode last year, but this year I started this thing where I would basically the first week of January I put up a poll where 4 games go up or 16 games go up, and my patrons can vote for as many of those 16 games as they want, but they technically can only vote for each game one time. But essentially the way it is, just any of the 16 games, they can vote as many times as they want across those 16 games. And the game with the 4 games with the most votes win, and they are going to be covered in October that same year for backlog month. So by the time this episode comes up, I'm probably going to be either the backlog month poll is currently happening or it will be happening shortly, because I either do it the week before the year ends or the first week of the new year. So it'd be, that kind of thing. So my patrons get to choose, and it'll be 16 games going up again, and the top 4 will be played and reviewed for October. And Toe Jim and Earl just happened to be one of them. So that's my number 10. What about your number 9 though, TJ?
So my number 9 over on YouTube was
Skibbity Toilet.
was Skibbity Riz Toilet. No, this is gonna be a thing. This whole
it is. I'm gonna try not to kill it this early on though.
Is tape number 34, Wedding Band and the Innkeeper's Bride. 2 very interesting stories about marriage and so forth. Over on the main podcast feed, it was tape number 8. Maybe Lovecraft was onto something. A great story from Reddit No Sleep by Alive Macaroon 88. And The Bride of the Sea, which is a H.P. Lovecraft story. So.
I kind of love these like vague titles because it's like I said, you can't go into the stories too much because you don't want to spoil it for people. But like, I love these titles. I'm like, I have no idea what this means, and that just makes me want to listen to it.
Yeah, especially it's interesting because on the podcast feed, most of the episodes actually all of them now are like in the first 10 episodes or so of the podcast's life, which is pretty standard for podcast stuff. But then my YouTube one's a little more kind of all over the place. So it's a little more interesting to talk about, to be honest. There's a wider variety of content. But it's always interesting to have, I'm a sucker for titles, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you have, and I'll say that with my next one, when I say it, you'll understand what I mean. But like, if you have a title that just makes me go like, what? Like maybe Lovecraft was onto something. Well, what is that? What was Lovecraft onto?
Racism, because Lovecraft was a racist piece of shit. So is that what he's on? Like, this escalated quickly.
Oh God. Yeah. But yeah, it's always fun.
For my number 9 over on YouTube, it's another backlog month game. It's the episode 329, The Order 1886, with Phil Morgan from the Deleted Saves podcast. Order 1886. I think you that's actually one of the PS4 games you played. I remember back on Two Guys in a Game, you talked about it.
That is correct, sir.
That was a good game. That was really
it
good.
Was.
And it definitely did not get the love it deserved. A lot of people gave it shit at the time. So it which is kind of frustrating, but I think it's aged actually really well, considering it came out, I think, in like 2016, I want to say. But my number 9 over the podcast feed was also a backlog month episode. It is Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus with my buddy Mick Arcade. That one, I was honestly surprised how well it did, considering it came out. It's like, let me see here. It's actually not one of the, what the fuck? God damn it. So my podcast hosting site decided to reorder everything. So my number 10 and 9 are not the 2 episodes I just shouted out.
Controversy
already. We'll do this real quick. Number 10, the actual number 10, my 10th most popular episode this year was Dragon Quest with Andre from the Fine Time podcast. When Akira Toriyama passed away, I was like, I really need to cover the games that Akira Toriyama worked on. Obviously most people go with something Dragon Ball Z related, but I went with some of the games that he did artwork for. So I covered Dragon Quest 1 through 3 and Chrono Trigger. And the first Dragon Quest episode actually got onto this top 10. So shout out to Andre from Fine Time, man. Like, really enjoyed having him on the show. He's going to be back on the show sometime next year. You just have to, or I guess, this is coming out in 2024. So sometime next year. Then game number 9, what it's supposed to be before my thing decided to fuck it up, was episode 309, Growing Up Genesis, with my friend G, with my buddy G from G to the Next Level. That was just talking about his series of, basically he has a series over on his Twitch channel called Growing Up Genesis, where he's playing through every single North American released Genesis game alphabetically. And and because the Genesis was his favorite system growing up, so he grew up on Genesis, hence the name. And it's all about going through his memories of, or going through every single game and talking about them, writing reviews on them, and turning them into like a video series. So really fun conversation. It wasn't necessarily about like a specific game or a specific deep dive, but I was really happy to have him on to talk about that because G's awesome. I love having them on the show, and it was awesome to chat with them. So there we go. I fixed that real quick. That was number 10 was Dragon Quest. Number 9 was Growing Up Genesis. Now back over to you, TJ, for your number 8.
So I think I also might have some controversy. Hang on a sec here.
Oh my God. Did we both controversialize?
We're on 8, right? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No. Okay. No, sorry. No, I'm good. Sorry.
Oh, fine. Make me feel worse.
I saw
now.
7. So on my podcast feed, my number 8 is tape number 7. That's what I saw, the 7, and it screwed me up. It is an episode. So anything, if I say like, so this episode is Arms and Window Man. So that's 2 stories stuck together. That's not like the title of the same. I should probably clear that up for some people. But yeah, Arms and Window Man, which every time I say it makes me think of Arms and the Leg Man from American Dad. Mm-hmm. For anyone who knows that.
The Arms and Leg Man.
Arms and the Leg Man. Because they're detectives. They're like detectives, and they both wanted to be in a wheelchair and be called the Leg Man. And yeah, it's the stupidest thing, but it's obviously every time I see Arms and the Leg Man, or Arms and Window Man, it just makes me think of that. 2 really great stories, really weird, both involving windows and people looking in your windows. So very creepy, very demure.
Very creepy, very creepy, very demure. Very demure.
Yes. And then over on the YouTube, we have tape number 39, the U-Haul incident.
What?
Oh, yes, sir. The U-Haul incident, which basically is a dude who works for U-Haul who is cleaning out a brand new truck. And he finds some stuff in it.
Okay.
And yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Some stuff goes down.
So those are your number 8s?
Those are my number 8s, yes.
My number 8, sorry, I was about to jump to 7. I haven't touched that yet. Yeah. So my number 8 is over on YouTube. Didn't come out this year. It's actually one from last year. I interviewed the voice actor Gary Chalk. So that's episode 248. That was kind of interesting. So Gary Chalk was my number 8 over on YouTube this year. And then my number 8 here on the main podcast feed. In fact, all the ones that are from like the most downloaded episodes this year are all episodes that came out this year too. So I didn't have any weird ones on the podcast feed that was from like 3 years ago that for some reason shot up. But my number 8 over on the podcast feed was Batman Arkham Asylum with my friend Heather. Heather is the first time I've ever had her on the show. I've had her husband Jamie on a few times, and it was awesome to get to have her on for the first time and talk about one of her, like, she's a huge Batman fan, and I got so many nice compliments on that episode. I was so happy it did so well because, like I'm not a Batman expert, so I'm always nervous. Like when you cover something that's as like, popular as that, like, how's it going to be received? But Heather more than made up for it on my lack of Batman knowledge, and she brought her A game. It was fantastic. So yeah, that's my number 8. Gary Chalk over on YouTube, and my 8 for the main feed is Batman Arkham Asylum. What's your 7, TJ?
So over on the YouTube, my 7th is tape number 10, Stories of the Slender Man.
Oh, video game-esque. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Which is, kind of. It's Slender Man didn't start out as a video game thing, but yes, it is. There is one video game story in this list, though. So,
is it me? Please say it's me.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, I'll tell you off air about that. But anyway, that's beside the point. So Stories of the Slender Man, which is one of my, I think it's my longest episode to date. There's 5 stories all about Slender Man from, all different walks of life and so forth, including an original one that I wrote kind of on the spot. So that's always fun. And wait a second, there's no way. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow. Interesting. My number 7th over on the podcast feed is actually also Stories of the Slender Man.
What?
I didn't catch that.
That's great.
Interesting. That's interesting. Okay. There you go.
I have a couple crossovers between my top episodes this year, and oh my gosh, if I'm doing the math correctly, I think there might be only one that matches up for both of mine as well, both YouTube and the podcast feed, but we'll see about that. But all right, so that was your 7. My 7, because it was the same. Wow, that's crazy. It was the same both. Is another episode from last year, and it was another voice actor episode. So, number 8 was Gary Chalk. Number 7 is Ian James Corlett, who's the original voice of Goku on Dragon Ball Z. He also has done tons of other stuff. Like he is Mega Man in the Mega Man cartoon. He's Dr. Wily in the Captain N cartoon. He's the voice of the conductor on Dinosaur Train. Dude's been around. Awesome guy. I loved getting to chat with him. He was so nice. So that's episode 267. That was from last year. And then my episode 7, or for number 7 for the main feed, is Mario Kart Double Dash with fellow Canadian TJ Mike Lane of the Unlocking What Was Cool podcast, and my buddy Veach, who used to be on he had a YouTube channel called Bite Size Pixel, which it's still up, but he kind of has taken a long hiatus from it. I don't know if he may come back at some point, but as of now, he's just enjoying not focusing on that. So the Mario Kart Double Dash, the first GameCube game I've done in a while, and it goes to show the power of GameCube. It's up there.
The Unlocking What Was Cool podcast. Those were the cats who did the GameCube Was Cool podcast, right?
Yep, same guys. Cool.
So yes, that's those guys. I love their stuff. I just wanted to make sure that was them.
Yeah, Mike and Neil.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was.
They've been taking a long hiatus again, but like they because they started the GameCube Was Cool back during the pandemic, and then they both got I think one of them was even still in college at the time, so they were both finishing up school. I don't know anymore. But it was during the pandemic, and then life happened, married and jobs and all this other stuff. So they haven't been able to podcast as much, but their show is amazing. They're super cool dudes. So yeah, that was my number 7. TJ, over to you for your number 6.
So my number 6 over on the
YouTube.
Over on the YouTube, we have tape number 26. Now I'm going to start jumping around a bit more. Cloudy Days.
Is it Days with a Z?
No, just normal days.
I don't know
Cloudy
why
Days, which is an emotional but sad, but also interestingly Lovecraftian story. So there's a couple episodes I do once. I feel like every 10 episodes I try to have one story that's like kind of sad, if that makes any sense. And for the
How
batch
do you go
of 20,
about finding the sad ones?
same way I find them all. I just
just gets real sad.
Yeah, same way I find them all, my man. I just look and I see something sad and I go, oh, this is sad. No, so the creepypasta.
It's just like I love that the naming. It was like I look around and I go, oh, this is sad, and then I know I found one that's sad. Sorry, continue.
So a lot of the stuff I do is from the amazing creepypasta wiki community, which people upload their stories. And you're allowed to, well, most of them anyway, unless they're listed as not Creative Commons. Well, it's basically Creative Commons. There's specific licensing, but I'm not going to get into it. So you're able to reuse them for any purpose that you like, while making sure you credit the author. Of course, that's that's a no-brainer. So that's so I go through there and I look around, and just every once in a while, like I said, I'm very much a title person, so I'll see Cloudy Days and it's like, oh, like what is this? And there's different categories and stuff, so it's like this story was under Lovecraftian, so I was like, ooh, which means it's like some Cthulhu, like very crazy, like kind of, it's its own genre, right? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I started reading it and I'm like, oh, this is a sad story, you know, but like also still creepy sad, but not like tape number 16, but that's another story for another time. Yeah. So number 6, Cloudy Days, very sad, very dark, very demure. So over on the podcast feed, the 6th, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, guys, they're not listed. Like the numbers aren't next to them. So I keep seeing the numbers of like tape number 5. And I'm like, wait, is this actually what I think it is? And it is indeed. And it keeps messing me up. So that is tape number 5, the one behind you, which is, I do some voice layering on that one.
I was looking behind me. I got confused. That's the name. But
that's an original story and very interesting. Very
demure.
Voice layering. Very demure. No.
Very skibbity.
Yeah, very skibbity riz, you know. But yeah. So those are my 2 6.
All right. For my 6, my 2 episodes at the 6th slot over on YouTube, it's episode 311, Tunic with Jill Grote. Jill is the head of a website called The Indie Informer, which is basically kind of like Jill used to work over at Game Informer before she quit before Game Informer shut down, like a year or so before it shut down. So, she didn't get laid off when Game Informer went away, but she started the Indie Informer kind of as like, kind of a play on Game Informer's name, and it's covering just indie games. She does amazing work over there. I was so happy to have her on the show for this. She was an awesome guest, and that episode was one of my favorites. I don't know if it's my favorite that I've done this year, but it's definitely up there for sure. So that's what it was. That's number 6 over on YouTube, and number 6 over on the main feed is The Most Relaxing Video Games with Ryan Janes. That was one of the. There's been a theme this year where I got a lot of review copies of books, and I interviewed a lot of authors. And Ryan was one of the authors that I interviewed, and he had a book just through, I think, White Owl Publishing, all about the most relaxing games. And White Owl, they do a lot of that type of stuff. They do a lot of kind of like tabletop, like your like coffee table books, where it's just like, here's a theme, here's a list of games, and here's like a small bunch of thoughts on each of the games. Each author that I've interviewed for that style, though, I tried to like. There's been a couple times publisher has reached out and asked if I would be interested in covering a book, and I've been saying no a handful of times just because the book either doesn't interest me or this and that. And the most relaxing video games I thought was at least interesting enough to the point where it's like, that's an interest to me. That's an interesting topic. It's not just like here's 50 horror games or here's 50 action games or whatnot. It's like, this is a gaming topic that I don't think I see people talking about a lot. So I thought it would be kind of interesting to do. So I had Ryan over on there. That was awesome. And actually, fun fact for those who aren't patrons, Ryan has returned to the show as a guest on my Fast and Furious movie rewatch podcast over on the Patreon at the $5 level, where he was on Still Family. That's the name of it.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. Still Family, where every guest who joins me, TJ, aren't just friends, they're family. Please say that the logo of that is you with like a bald head. No, oh my God, I should have done that. I'm doing that for you. You can. I'm gonna have AI make a version of Vin Diesel with your face. Oh my God, no, don't use AI. Just hire Jason. Hire a real artist. But they yeah, so Ryan was on that, and actually I need to start planning my second episode for Still Family now. But anyway, so yeah, that's my note. Yeah. Oh, and have you seen all the Fast and Furious movies, TJ? No, not even close. Well, there's a point in Fast 5, the 5th one, where Dom, Vin Diesel, is giving a toast with all of the main characters from the movie. And Fast 5 is the first one where like they kind of do it as like a reunion type of thing, where you see characters from the previous films that you might not have seen for a handful of years like suddenly come together. and they're all gathered around right before they're about to pull like the final, like it's right before the final action set piece. So they're all gathering around and be like, "Oh man, you know, we're all here together." And he has a speech where he's like, you know, "Money will come and go. We all know this, you know, but the people right here, right now, you know, the most important people," or something like that. I have it written down somewhere, but he goes, "But the people in this room right here, right now, are the ones that matter most." And then he ends it by going, you know, "Salute me familia," and you know, and so, which I can't even say with any level of gravitas like Vin Diesel can, but I changed it up. Instead of saying "from in this room right here right now," I changed it to "this pod right here right now," and I end every episode with that monologue. That speech is how every episode is going to end of Still Family.
I just can't even take it seriously. Just the fact that I love that you and I have talked a ton over the years about like branding and like how it's so important to brand your show with everything you do, and the fact that you know, still bonding,
Yeah,
you know, and then now Still Family. It's just
dude, and
it's just
eventually
great.
like I don't mind switching it up to like something other than just movie series or franchises, but it's a lot more fun that way. I don't want it to be like, here's just like, I'm not going to just do a one-off episode of like, here's like a one-off random action movie. Like if I want to do, maybe if I do like 80s action movies, I'll call it like Still 80s or something like that. I'm not sure, but like I want to do it in like themes where I would pick like like if it's not a movie franchise, it'll be like a season of like similar style movies. You know, it might be like similar dramas or similar action movies or something like that. So after Still Family's done, I have to figure out what I want to do. But I've tossed around doing the Three Ninjas movies. I've tossed around doing the Mighty Ducks movies. So we'll see where it goes. But Still Family, there, you know, there's 10 Fast and Furious movies plus Hobbs and Shaw. So I got at least a year's worth of content out of that. So we'll see where it goes. But TJ, back over to you for your I think, yeah, for number 5. That's what we're up to now.
So for number 5, also just real quick, when you get to the Still Skibbity reviews, let me know, and I will love to be a part of that. Back to the content here, folks. So in my my 5th spot, we have the video game story I was talking about. Tape number 11, Fallout 4.
God damn it. For listeners, the reason I keep getting my hopes up is I was in an episode. I lent my voice to an episode that was video game related. So every time he's like, the video game episode, I'm like, huh? And then it's not it.
And then it's just the biggest letdown for him when
it is. When makes me sad.
You know, and also for the record, folks, I'm just pulling that episode up because I want to make sure. I believe it is episode 28 or tape number 20. Excuse me. Come on, YouTube. Why do I need to go on the sorry guys, hold please. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, tape number 8. We see Josh reading a creepypasta called Mr. Mix, which, by the way, that's probably like number 11.
Oh, so close.
By the way, so
close.
It was actually maybe not, but it's at least in the top.
Thanks for
man, it's in the top 45. You know. You know, I only had 45 episodes this year, but that's not important because it's definitely in the top like 15. That was a great episode. And you did such a killer job. It was so fun.
You're too kind. I mean, I didn't bring it up just for you to make me feel good, but yes, thank you.
Come on. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know. No, but that was so much fun for me. And also, before I forget, I need to thank you because you being a part of that is, I believe, how I don't know their name or anything aside from their Discord
Keaton?
Name. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. They found the show through you and are now on my Discord, and they always seem to listen to most of the episodes and always have some kind words to say. And it's been a really great little there was one day where I was really down on myself because I was really not proud of how an episode turned out, which is, that's pretty standard shit for me. And they actually commented and said some really nice stuff. And I was like, oh, like maybe it's not as bad as I thought. So I went back and listened to it, and I was like, no, this is actually pretty okay. Like, so yeah, big shout outs to Keaton. And also I like Keaton's, and yeah, so there's that. Fallout 4 Mannequins, tape number 11, 5th spot. It is about Fallout 4 and mannequins that randomly show up and are creepy and possibly possessed. Very well done. Great story. A lot of fun. Came out around the time Fallout the show came out, so that's one reason why it did so well, because it was algorithms and so forth. And then over on the podcast feed at the 5th spot, we have tape number 6. Have you ever heard of a skinwalker? Which is a great little story, very creepy, about skinwalkers. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory on that one, but yeah, a lot of fun. So what's your fourth?
Or fifth.
Excuse me. Yes.
But yeah, so my fifth one is episode 296, the first episode, I think, or one of the earliest episodes that came out this year. It was the game Celeste with Ryan Kern. Ryan is actually a friend of mine that I met that I know from real life. Like, I actually did not meet through the podcast. I met like before I started the podcast, and then I was on Facebook one day and I saw him like commenting on video game stuff, and his commentary I thought was like actually really insightful and well thought out. And I'm like, you know what? I should like reach out to him and be like, hey, like, I do this video game podcast. I'd love to get you on just because I see you talk about games, and I would love to have a chance to chat with you and like just to, we can pick a game to talk about. And one of the games he picked, he sent over to me was Celeste, and I fucking love Celeste. So I invited him on for that, and it was a very popular episode. It didn't make my top 10 on the main podcast feed, but I'm pretty happy it made the top 10 over here on YouTube. So that was my number 5 on YouTube. And then my number 5 over here on the main feed was episode 300, the big 300, my Super Mario Fantasy Draft. For longtime listeners, I do the Final Fantasy Draft every year. That did not make it this year, which is kind of surprising. Normally, the Final Fantasy Draft does pretty well, and normally that means that like it'll show up in the top 10, but it did not this year, which is a little bit of a bummer. But it is what it is. I'm trying to even see, did it even make it into the top 20? Now that I'm like looking at it, yes, the Final Fantasy Draft from this year did make it in the top 20, but towards the tail end. So it just goes to show how many episodes did much better than I was expecting this year. So yeah, the Super Mario Fantasy Draft was my episode 300. Huge episode. It had a bunch of cool guests, a bunch of first-time guests. Matt Storm from the Fun and Games podcast. They were awesome to have on, and they've been on now at least one other time, and one other time coming. There's another game that we're going to be talking about sometime next year. And then Diamond Fight from Retronauts. Z was awesome to have on. I had them on the a lot of my Still Bonding episodes. They were on, The Living Daylights, and oh my gosh, it was the other Timothy Dalton, License to Kill. So it was cool to get both Matt and Diamond on for this as their first episode, and had a couple returning guests, Try from My Life in Gaming and Keith Gasper from The Main Quest. It was a good time all around. So that was my number 5, the Super Mario Fantasy Draft. So now we're into the top, like well into the top 5, right? No, I guess top 5 started here, but we're getting down to it. We're getting close to the wire. This is our 4th most popular episode this year. So TJ, over to you. What was your 4th most popular episode this year?
So number 4 for me over on the YouTube was tape number 30, Videotape in the Footlocker, which is about a videotape found in a strange room in someone's basement. What's on it? Who knows? Probably nothing good. And here we go. Number 4 over on the main feed is tape number 4, The Backrooms, which is a collection of stories about the backrooms phenomena. You either know it or you don't, and there's some cool ones in there. Very fun. And yeah, very cool. I'm trying to be vague while not being too vague, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I getcha. All right. So for my number 4, then let me get I accidentally switched over to the wrong tab here. My number 4, it's I alluded to it beforehand how two episodes actually matched up for me as well, and that's what it is right here. It's in the number 4 slot. Chrono Trigger with my buddy Aiden Mower, author and journalist Aiden Mower. Amazing. Like, Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games of all time, man. I love that game so much. And I did that as the finale to my Toriyama month. That I mentioned Dragon Quest was the first episode. So it's kind of cool that the first episode of Toriyama month made it into the top 10, and the finale of Toriyama month also made it into the top 10. And that was it was awesome. I loved that episode a lot. Really went deep on the game, not just like talking about like the things that, not just talking about development, but like themes and stuff like that. And just Aiden is so insightful, and it was great having him on. I loved that episode, man. So much fun to do. So I don't have a second episode to shout out, so we're moving right on up to episode 3, our third most popular episode of 2024. So TJ, what was your third most popular episode?
So my number 3 over on the YouTube was another pretty recent episode, tape number 43, entitled Comet, which is basically a story about a hunter who finds something very interesting in a crater from what he believed was Halley's Comet, but it is not. And he finds something very interesting. A reindeer.
A reindeer?
Interesting. What could it be? What is it? You have to listen to find out. Very fun story. Huge shout out to the author, actually, as well. His name is Mac Ralston. He is a bit of a legend. Not a bit of a legend. He is a legend over on the Creepypasta Wiki. And he actually reached out to me about one of the stories I did of his this year, and was like super cool. Mm-hmm. And has since been a big supporter of the show. I've done a few of his stories. He is just a wonderful dude, very, very talented, and was super cool. Going to be hopefully doing some stuff with him next year. But yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't give him a shout out. And it's really cool that one of his episodes not only made it in the top 10, but the top 5. I am very excited about that. That's very cool. And also, it's cool for me that, I have some of my most recent episodes are actually in my top 10. That's very exciting for me. I didn't know that until I was looking at this list. So that's pretty cool. Over on the main feed, we have tape number 2.
Oh, like the second one of the release. Wow.
He Waits for You, which, listen, guys, if you are having trouble finding love and you're willing to do anything to find that love, do not be afraid.
That just made me more afraid.
It's for you. All you got to do is go to a hotel, and don't worry, he's there.
It's fucking fine. No big deal.
He will welcome you. Fun story, creepy, a kind of a classic creepypasta. Very weird, but yeah. Very weird, very creepy, very demure. Yes, very creepy. Yeah, fun story. That was actually obviously it's the second episode of the podcast. So like, that's, cool and interesting to have. Spoiler alert, the next 2 are also in that category. But that's one of the stories that made me really want to do this podcast, actually.
Okay. So that's a good starting point for a lot of people then. Mm-hmm. You finished your both, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. My episode 3 over on YouTube is the Nintendo DS, episode 333, the Nintendo DS with Bill Barber and our boy from the last episode, Aiden Mower. Aiden came back on, and those episodes, like Chrono Trigger is episode 316, and the DS is episode 333. So there's almost 20 some odd episodes in between those two. So like there's a bit of a gap, but Aiden came back on for this one because what was crazy about 2024 was there was a lot of big anniversaries this year. The Nintendo DS turned 20 years old this year. There's actually I think Donkey Kong Country turned 20 years old. I think that came out 30 years old, excuse me. That came out in 94. So did Super Metroid, I want to say. That came out in 94. There's a lot of games that came out in 94, in 2004, probably something in 84 that I don't know off the top of my head. But there's a lot of stuff that is hitting that 10. The PlayStation 4 came out in 2013, but a lot of stuff is hitting that like those major milestone marks, right? So you'll see that theme continue with the next episode that's at number 2 in YouTube, which we'll get to that a little later on. But my third most viewed episode in 2024 on YouTube was all on the Nintendo DS, and the third most popular episode over on the main feed, over on the podcast feed, was episode number 302. One of the beginnings of one of the earliest episodes of Mario Month this year, Mario Kart 64 with Luigi's Apartment, and returning guest from the Celeste episode, Ryan Kern. Ryan was on a ton of episodes this year with me. He was in so many. It was honestly surprising to see how many he ended up being in with. Like there was he was in another, not, I don't think any of more of his episodes make the list, but he was in my World of Warcraft finale episode on Wrath of the Lich King. He was in, I did an episode on Warhammer Bolt Gun, Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun. That was a patron poll topic. So he came on the show for the first time this year, and he has 4 episodes under his belt already, which is just like crazy that I didn't talk to him for quite some time. And then within the span of a year, we just collaborated like 4 times. It was nuts. And it was awesome. Mario Kart 64 obviously is a super popular game, and I thought we did a really good job with that episode. And Ryan and Luigi brought their A games, or if we're going by racing ranks, their S rank games. So it was a good time. So yeah, that's my number 3 over on both those locations. Nintendo DS over on YouTube, and on the main feed, Mario Kart 64. So top 2, TJ. We're making it to the top 2. What is your second most popular episode this year?
So top 2 by a mile. My top 2 for both the YouTube and the main feeds are pretty substantially ahead of everything else. Over on the YouTube, my number 2 video of the year is tape number 38, The Last Time I Went Trick-or-Treating, which is an original story. And it's also a story that has probably the most man hours into, as far as like actual editing and production and sound design time. Mm-hmm. So I'm thrilled that it's my number 2, and it was almost my number 1. It was 4 reviews away from my number 1 spot. So that's actually 5. So I'm not going to lie. That's a little like, would have been really cool for it to, it'll probably be at number 1 by the end of the year. But considering it caught up to my number 1 spot, it's pretty wild that it almost caught my number 1 video. So that's very exciting. Pretty self-explanatory. Story of a young boy and the last time he went trick-or-treating. So yeah, that's that. Over on the main feed, my number 2 spot is tape number 1.
Whoa. Okay.
Yes. It's Always Watching Me, which is an original story about a very disturbed man who is seeing something that is always watching him. Is it real? Is it all in his head? Who knows? That story also is one of the only times I used a very specific type of voice and a really like crazy performance. Some people have said it was a weird one to start on because it's very different from everything else, but it is what it is. When I started tapes, I uploaded the first 5 episodes all at once, and that has a pretty good like base of everything I have available to people. Mm-hmm. So I said to everybody, if you listen to those first 5 and you don't hear anything you like, my show's probably not for you. But if you hear at least one episode in those 5 that you like, then cool. Like that's, that's that. So yeah, it's always watching me over on the main feed and then over on the YouTube, tape number 38, last time I went trick-or-treating.
All right. Okay. For my number 2 over on YouTube, it is episode 334, World of Warcraft, the start of my World of Warcraft. I mentioned before with the Nintendo DS episode that this was a big year for like anniversaries. World of Warcraft turned 20 this year. It came out in 2004. So I did a big 3-part series on World of Warcraft where I covered the original base game. I covered the expansion of the Burning Crusade, and I covered its second expansion, the Wrath of the Lich King. So there's a lot more to World of Warcraft than just what we talked about. There's so many expansions now, but that was WoW as I remembered it. I played a lot in Wrath of the Lich King era, so I wanted to kind of devote a large portion of my show to World of Warcraft for 3 weeks in a row. It was WoW Central. It was all about World of Warcraft, and it was awesome. So that was number 2 over on YouTube. And number 2 over on the main feed, one of my favorite episodes of the year, episode 325, the Sega Dreamcast with Andrew Kinsey and Corey Carlson. Another anniversary episode. The Sega Dreamcast turned 25 this year. Came out in 1999, so it was it's a big anniversary for it. 5s and 10s, baby. That's what I would go for. I don't do any of this like it's the 27th anniversary of this thing. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about that.
5s and 10s, bro.
5 and 10s. I'm stealing the joke. It's a joke from another podcast I listen to, the CU podcast, where like we only work with 5s and 10s. I'm like, damn straight you do. Who gives a shit if it's the 27th anniversary or the 31st of something? 5s and 10s. So it's the 25th anniversary of the Sega Dreamcast. I thought it'd be cool to do an episode on it. So I invited my buddy Andrew, who's been on the show a bunch of times. Actually, one of the things we started doing this year, Andrew is the host of a YouTube series, YouTubing and streaming channel called The Experience Point. And every Tuesday we do this thing called Talk Tuesday, where it's essentially just like a little talk show. We shoot the shit for like an hour and a half or so and just kind of talk about the things we experienced throughout the week. Like, what games did we play? What movies did we watch? What's going on in our lives. It's fun. It's been fun. And then after that, I stream over on my personal Twitch channel, on the podcast Twitch channel, I should say. So he was on for this one. And then Corey is from the YouTube channel My Life in Gaming, one of my favorite YouTube channels out there. I love Try and Corey are the 2 hosts of that. I love both of them so much. They're awesome people. And it was one of my favorite episodes to record. We had a lot of fun with it. So that was my number 2. The World of Warcraft over on YouTube and the Sega Dreamcast over on the main feed. So TJ, number 1, the most popular episode this year. What was it? What got you up there?
So I have to just say what got me up. This number 1 video over on the YouTube, it ends in 69. So that was funny. Like the view count ends in 69. So that was funny. Moving on. So number 1 for Tapes of Trepidation over on the YouTube for this year, the first year in existence of this podcast, is tape number 9, The Cold, which I already mentioned in my podcast feed list. This one was at my number 1 spot by a mile for a long time, like pretty much the whole year. It came out in April, and it was in my number 1 spot by a couple hundred more for a while. And now the last time I went trick-or-treating was only behind by 4 or 5, then it would have surpassed it. So that's pretty cool. I just want to, again, say for me as a creator, an original story of mine and something I put so much work into was very close. So that's cool. I already kind of mentioned what the story's about, but yeah, really fun, great story. Very high in NyQuil when I recorded it. I don't actually remember that recording session, truth be told.
Wow.
Yeah. And a couple people have said that's one of my best performances because I quote unquote go feral. I go pretty feral in that one. It's a really interesting story that's just I can't even, yeah. It's just, yeah. And I go feral, very demure. So from then on, my number one over on the main podcast feed is tape number 3, Gateway of the Mind, which is a classic creepypasta, basically about what would happen if all of your nerves in your body were shut down, because apparently if you do that, you can speak to God. What would God say to you? Or is it God you're speaking to? Who knows? Let's just say some shit goes down. Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, tape number 1. Or tape number 3. My number 1 spot over on the main feed. And then tape number 9, The Cold, over on the YouTube for Tapes of Trepidation. Very cool, very exciting. Before I pass over to you, I just want to say for the Hodder Show, I already mentioned my number 1 episode was featuring Zach Smith, who was the bassist for a band called Pound of Flesh. He is now in Itis. Big shouts to him. He genuinely is a wonderful dude, very talented. And also his episode literally kept my podcast alive this year because it progressively got more views as the year went on. But my number 1 over on YouTube, I thought was very interesting. I want to shout this out. So January 4th, I released a short that was a clip from our episode from 2023. And it was, what's the most evil act you've ever committed in a video game? And the response I had was throwing the penguin off of the mountain in Super Mario 64.
Oh yeah, I remember that clip now.
That episode, that clip actually did weirdly well. And it's so random.
As a short, right?
Yes, I did.
That's why so shorts random. They prioritize shorts over everything else.
Yes, it's so random. I just wanted to give that a shout out because I thought that was funny. Yeah, and that's my top stuff for the year for both podcasts.
It's funny, like I'm not counting these, but technically my 2 most viewed quote unquote videos on YouTube are the 2 shorts I did promoting the Bluey episode. I did an episode on the Bluey video game earlier this year, and both the shorts have almost 500 views, which is like, that's nothing compared to most shorts, but compared to my, normally I get about like, actually, what's been crazy is that this year I've been getting more and more views on my videos than I have before. Like I'm averaging 20 to 30, like maybe not that high, but like maybe 15 to 30 views on an episode on YouTube, which is like really good considering I don't do any effort at all on YouTube. I literally it's just the audio and a picture of the thumbnail, right? Like there is so little effort put into YouTube. So the fact that I'm getting consistent numbers, like even though they're small, the fact that they're consistent is what's surprising me. You know what I mean? So I'm just always impressed by that. But yeah, technically the number 1 and number 2 spot go to Bluey shorts of just me literally just kind of shuffling my shoulders in a dancing way, be like, hey, a Bluey episode's coming. And that's literally it. So, but my number 1, the actual episode that is number 1 on YouTube wasn't even one of my main episodes. So when Still Bonding ended, I did a full James Bond ranking episode with me, my buddy Chris, aka the British Bond Addict, and Mel, aka James Burb, over on Instagram. Both of them I met through Instagram, and we ranked all 25 Bond films, all 25 mainline Bond films. And it was a 4-hour long episode, or 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. So basically 4. And that thing basically tripled everything that I had prior. Like it was insane. I've never seen that before. It almost tripled all of my it's almost triple what episode 2, like the second place. Like World of Warcraft is 3 times as less popular, just about, maybe a little bit, maybe not quite that low, but it's crazy. And what's even wilder, you ever see like the average view duration, right? Where you can see, like most episodes you get like maybe 4 to 5 minutes, at least for me, like maybe 10 minutes is the average view duration, because so many people click in, maybe watch 30 seconds and move on type of shit. that one has over an hour and 15 minutes, even though there's over 200 views on it, which is, that honestly surprised me that it's that, like, enough people watched it for that long. Like, that means more than people probably watched the full thing than didn't, which is just crazy to me. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not more people watch the full thing than it, but it's still, it's nuts. So that's my number one. It's my still bonding number 36, my James Bond movie ranking. And I'm surprised it blew up. For me, it blew up for me. It's not even at 1,000 views, but it blew up for me. My number one on the main feed, on the actual podcast feed, was something that has already been ranked over on YouTube. It is episode 311, Tunic with Jill Grote. So I'm not going to rehash everything I said before, but like, Jill's awesome. Love what she does over at the Indie Informer. Tunic was one of my favorite games that I played this year. And once it came out, I just never really lost momentum. It stuck up at the top slot for pretty much the entire year after it came out. So yeah, that is my number one. And those are our top 10s. Been a good year for both our shows. I know the Hodder Show had to take a step back, but like, the fact that you've kept up with Tapes is awesome. And so it's cool to see, like, it's been doing well so far. I do want to have our next thing is, if you can think of it, TJ, I don't know if you have it prepared or not, but like our favorite episode, that like one of our favorite episodes that we did this year. It doesn't have to be the favorite. We're not going to go with definitive, but like, the out of all the episodes that you released this year, which one just kind of stood out to you as like one of your favorites? You can even shout out like 2 or 3 if you're having a hard time figuring which is which. Do you have any that you know of off the top of your head? Otherwise, I can just dive into a few of mine.
So for me, I do have a couple for sure. Probably, I mean, tape number 38, the last time I went trick-or-treating, definitely has to be in my 3. Really proud of that episode. Really love that episode. But probably my number 2, I'll do my top 3. So that's my number 3. My number 2 is actually an episode that's just it's like a smile emoji. So it's called Smile, but like not really. It's a short episode, but it's such a weird little story that's all told through text messages for the most part. So I was like, how am I going to translate this text story that is told through text messages and emojis into an audio narration? Yeah. Which I felt I did. The author was actually really thrilled. He was like, I had no idea how you were going to do this. And he's like, I actually really, really enjoyed it. So that one was a lot of fun. And it's also a really weird look at what would happen if you just get a random text message one day that's just a smile emoji and then a frown emoji as you do certain things. That's kind of interesting. So I had a lot of fun with that one. And one more honorable mention. So I had a friend of mine and also a patron of mine, Daniel Barton, submitted 3 stories to the podcast this year. One was called Go Fish, which is a weird kind of creature feature episode. But also he did one very recently for the Christmas content called It's Christmas Again. And that's definitely, out of all the Christmas stories I'm doing this year, that's for sure my favorite. I really love that story. I really I can identify with the character, that's when I really have fun, is when I can really sink my teeth into the character and how they react to certain things and what they're doing. So I really love that story. Guy wakes up Christmas morning and everything seems really cool. But is it cool? Probably not. But I think the one that I always go back to as my favorite for this year, but also in the first year of the show being a thing, there's a bunch. I could be here all day. There's a bunch of other ones I would love to shout out, but tape number 25 is a story from Reddit called 11 Days Without Sleep. And it's told in journal entries. And as the journal entries progress, weirder stuff starts happening. But then also the guy gets progressively like more tired. Yeah. And So by the end of it, I'm like slurring my words and I can barely form a sentence. And again, I was pretty happy with it. Like I was like, I think this is kind of interesting. And I kind of just like released it. Didn't really think anything of it. But every time I go back to it, which, you know, it isn't a lot, but people will be like, oh, like I really like this episode. I'm just like, this is exactly how I react in this situation. I have gone a few days in a row without actual sleep of any kind. And I did start experiencing some weird shit. So I was like, hey, 11 days without sleep. How would that actually go? So I just, for the performance, for the story, the reaction from it, the author's reaction from it, which they were, again, very like, holy crap, I didn't really expect much from this, to be brutally honest with you. But like, I really, really love this, which is always cool when I can kind of surprise an author with the quality of the content. But I think that's probably got to be my one. 11 Days Without Sleep. Very cool. There's a lot of them in there that I could, the wrestling one is fun too. But yeah, probably 11 Days Without Sleep.
All right.
That's my number one. How about you?
I mean, it's kind of hard to pick which ones I enjoyed the most. I think I don't really have a favorite because it's kind of I did, besides all the still bonding ones and all the bonus episodes for Patreon and the 52 other episodes I made on the main feed, it's hard to keep track of which one. If I had it, just like kind of looking through the list of episodes that released this year, Celeste with Ryan Kern, just because that was like, every now and then I record an episode of a podcast that reminds me why I love talking about video games so much. And that was one of them. I actually had another experience like that somewhat recently where I finished the recording session and, I don't know if the episode's going to do well or not, but I just had so much fun doing it. And I can't say what the new one is just yet. It'll be out later on, but the Celeste one gave me that same feeling as well. Also want to shout out the Tunic with Jill. That Tunic was, I had such a fun time doing that episode with her. It was great. Dragon Quest with Andre from Fine Time, just because I wasn't quite, I was nervous to do Dragon Quest because it's such a legendary series, and I was really anxious that I was going to do it justice, and Andre made it so easy. He really, like, he was awesome. My John Stalker interview. John Stalker is a voice actor who did Toad from the Super Mario Super Show. That really obnoxious, like, hello, like that was classic. Him. I know, right? I tried to back away from the mic and I didn't go as loud as I could have. So hopefully I didn't blow out anybody's eardrums. But Chrono Trigger with Aiden Mower. And the last one I'll shout out just came out. It's actually the two most recent episodes. The episode right before this, which is, at the time we're recording this, has not come out, but it's episode 5 of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show with Dexter. That, the rewatch ones are always fun. They're kind of like just like a way to kind of ground me again, to bring every month there's another one coming back. And that one, Dexter and I just had so much fun because there was so much innuendo in the episode we watched where, like, I kid you not, TJ, there's a character in it who is they meet Mario and Luigi meet Mark Twang, who is in a steamboat race against King Koopa down the river. And Koopa creates a barrier for them and they have to get around. And Mark Twang, not Twain, Twang goes, we have to get to the mouth of the river. And Mario and Luigi, that's a great idea. Where is it? And he goes, not where, who? And then they go to like this fortune teller lady who goes, well, you've come to the right place, boys. I'm the fastest mouth in the South. And that's the first fucking thing you hear. The whole thing. And I just, it killed me. It killed me. And then the episode before that was in my interview with Jesper Jewell on his book on the 5 Lives of the Commodore 64. Love that episode too. So those are the ones I want to shout out: the fastest mouth in the South and 5 Lives of Commodore 64.
Lots of shout outs, lots of good stuff.
Are you the fastest mouth in the South, TJ?
I'm the fastest mouth in the North.
In the Great White North, surfing on a goddamn surfboard of moose antler, eh?
I'm probably one of the fastest mouths in Peterborough, Ontario. That's for sure.
There we go. Well, TJ, before we go, there's two things we were going to do. We're going to talk about which podcasts we listened to this year, and then also just a goal. What's a goal for each of our respective shows for the next year? We're not going to go back and forth. Why don't you just list your top 5 podcasts that you listened to this year?
Okay, so my top 5. I'm just looking for my thing here. I had it pulled up. There it is. So my top 5. Starting off at, and also I want to give a 2 very quick shout outs to my number 7 and 6 spots. My boy, Dr. Torment, and his Dr. Torment's Readings of Terror, which he has an actual podcast version of his YouTube channel now. He's great. Madam Strangeways, who is a fantastic nonfiction horror narrator. Very cool stuff. She's awesome. Now, my actual official top 5, we have The Antiquarium of Sinister Happenings, which is a great, these are all horror related, obviously. Actually, except for my number 4, it's a podcast called Are You Scared of These Stories? And it is, it's like a comedy podcast where they're telling you, quote unquote, spooky stories around a campfire, but they like have sound design and stuff and they act them all out and everything. But then like they're ridiculous and silly. They're not like actually spooky, but it's one of the best podcasts I've ever heard in my life. It is absolutely fantastic. My number 3 spot is the podcast SCP Archives Patreon feed. That's the podcast that really got me started with all this audio horror stuff. So I love that podcast. My number 2 spot is the No Sleep podcast, which is needs no introduction to horror fans. It is like the number 1 audio horror podcast in the world. I'm pretty positive on that anyway. At least one of them. Fantastic podcast, also made by Canadian guys, so that's cool. And then my number 1, as it has been the last 3 years in a row, to the surprise of no one, Creepy and their podcast, their Patreon feed. And actually, funny story, I ended up accidentally resetting the stats for Creepy's Patreon feed. So I lost all my progress I had, and it still made its way back to my number 1. And I have listened to a lot of podcasts this year, like days worth of podcasts, days and days and days.
Same.
Yeah. So
my podcast listening sadly is going to plummet now. I used to average like about a day a week in terms of listening, and now it's probably going to only get about like maybe, if I'm lucky, like 12 to 16 hours. So I'm losing, or maybe a little bit less than that. So I'm losing a lot, unfortunately. A little bit more than a day a week. I don't know. Actually, hold the goddamn phone. No, that's about right. Never mind. I'm losing my mind. Anyway, my top 5. Coming in at number 5 is Retronauts. That should not be surprising to a lot of y'all. You know, I'm a huge fan of Retronauts, so I'm pretty far behind on their feed as of this recording. Number 4, Nerd Poker, which I've been really getting into Dungeons and Dragons again, and that is a D&D podcast with a bunch of comedians, and I really, really love it. So I've been listening. I got back into it, and I just started binging their stuff, and I went through like a whole bunch of campaigns, and even though I didn't start listening to them until midway through the year, I still logged over 2 days worth of listening time to it, which is crazy. Then there is actually, I'm so sorry. I kind of screwed this up because my 2 and 3 slots are all part or like a Patreon feed and then the main feed for the same podcast. So I will actually go one down. My number 5 is the podcast Tell 'em Steve Dave. Then number 4 is Retronauts. 3 is Nerd Poker. Number 2 is Comedy Bang Bang. I've talked about that show a ton. I love Comedy Bang Bang. Between that and their Patreon feed, I have listened to a lot. And at number 1, a Canadian, TJ. I think it was the same last year as well. It was the Steve Dangle podcast. And it's actually about the same amount of hours and days that I listened to last year, actually, which is kind of crazy to think about. The Steve Dangle podcast, because they release 3 episodes a week, and they're always at least an hour and a half to 2 hours long. So like, if you listen to all 3 episodes all throughout the year, with the exception of the time when they're like on hiatus, like or over their summer break. Like it's just a lot of content. So that's my top 5. Also, shout out at just below at number 6, my buddies over at Retro Hangover. Love you guys, Chris and Shane. You're awesome. So I want to give you a quick shout out. Now we are running low on time, TJ. I know you said you have to get going soon, so let's do this. What's a goal for either the Hodder Show or Tapes of Trepidation that you have for next year?
So the Hodder Show, it's pretty simple. Just get back after it while still having fun. Like, last year I said my goal was to get to episode 400, and then I was probably going to take a long hiatus. I didn't even get there. So I want to get to episode 400. I want to get back to doing somewhat regular content. My goal is to still keep rolling. My goal is 500 episodes of the Hodder Show at the 10-year mark, which is still very doable right now. So that's kind of my goal. After that, no idea, but that's kind of the immediate goal for the Hodder Show. As far as Tapes of Trepidation, man, I just keep having fun, keep growing it. And, it's been a great first year for Tapes. It has done better than I thought it would. I didn't really have any expectations for this podcast. I just was like, I'm going to do this because it's fun and I want to do it. And enough people have said I should give it a shot that I'm going to. And it's been a lot of fun. There's been some cool moments. I started off the year with a series of messages from my literal favorite podcast and podcaster, giving me some very useful advice. So that was like, I was like, no matter what happens for the rest of the year, it's been a great year. Cause that's been just so cool. And I've got to rub elbows a little bit with some of my favorite voice actors and stuff because of the pod. And it's just cool. It's been fun. There's been some great content. Mm-hmm. And next year's just keep rolling, keep doing things. And, I'll possibly hit episode 100 next year, I think, or the year. Actually, no, I think it's the year after. So that's for next year. But yeah, just keep rolling, keep having fun, man. That's it. That's what it's all about. We all got into this because it's fun, right? That's the idea. So that's the goal.
I guess for myself, I still have that one of doing that. What is it? The audio drama of like one of that, like a video game short story. I already have one in mind. I've talked about it every single year. I have not sat down and really like bit the bullet. So I really need to figure that out and really need to just like set aside time for it. I just have not. So that's ever on the docket until I actually do it. Other than that, man, it's just, I mentioned before that I moved houses, and part of me was a little nervous. Like, this is all superstition. It's not actually based out of any like real, genuine like logic. But like, I'm like, well, what if I go to this new location and my podcasting changes? You know what I mean? Like, I'm in a new space. I'm not in the same comfortable digs that I'm used to. Like, is something going to change? And I'm happy to say so far, at least in the couple months that I've recorded here so far, it hasn't. And some of my favorite episodes I've recorded while in this new location. I think the last episode I recorded back at the old house was Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus in the October one. Even though at the time I was living in this new house. We had already moved, but I recorded so far in advance. I was like, I got ahead. But like some of my favorite episodes, like the Nintendo DS episode, the World of Warcraft series, the one I just recorded for an episode I recorded an episode last night that's due out sometime next year, and I was just so happy with it. So I guess my goal is just to, like, normally it's like, I think I might have even said last year is like do more series, I think was one of my goals last year. I don't know if that's true or not. And I did that. I did my, my Mario month. I did my World of Warcraft series. I did my backlog month, which is like a kind of a loose series. It's just the connective tissue of those games is that they're all in my backlog. And then I did Toriyama month. So I did do that. And now I think I just want to as dumb as it sounds, I shouldn't say dumb, but as like of a non-answer as it sounds, just kind of what you said with tapes, like just have fun. Because I think sometimes I was getting this year, I found myself getting trapped too much in the numbers and like being like, okay, this episode didn't do as well as I was hoping, or this episode did better than I had hoped. And I want to kind of just be more in the moment with the show, you know, and allow myself to enjoy what I've been doing as it's happening. And I think at least in the last couple weeks, you know, after the move and everything, it's been kind of like that. I've recorded a few episodes now that like, I really enjoyed and just had a lot of fun with. And I just want to kind of, you know, I'm still always trying to find stuff that I think people will find interesting, but also that I find interesting. That's the main thing I focus on. But at the same time, I just want to be more in the moment instead of constantly wondering, like, is this going to be good? How's this going to be received? And I've never gotten even mean feedback. Like a lot of this is just my own anxiety talking, but I just want to work on more living in that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, man. And that's, you know, that's like, I've tried for that to be my whole motto with tapes, just being in existence to begin with. Right. It's just have fun. Because if I worried about numbers and stuff, like really, to be quite blunt, if I worried about stuff like that this year in this podcast, would have been an absolute failure. Meaning like I didn't do 20,000 downloads in my first year or anything. Like, you know, if you're looking at it from a standpoint of, you know, compared to other stuff out there, you know, it's been an absolute failure. But well, I shouldn't say failure, but it's been not as good as it could have probably. But I'm a lot more worried about, hey, how has it been received? How much fun have I had doing it? And it's been a lot of work, and it's you know, yes, it's caused me some stress a couple times when it's like, holy shit, this isn't done, or oh no, my, you know, episode I just spent 4.5 hours doing production on just corrupted. Now I have to redo the whole thing, you know, stuff like that. But it's like, is it still fun? And it's just still giving me that fulfillment I had early this year, and it is more in a different way as well. Like it's giving me so much more. So it's like just getting back to having fun, man. That's so cool to hear that that's something that you want to kind of, not getting back to having fun, but not worrying so much about the numbers. Because trust me, I mean, you know that I know how that is when you're worrying about that kind of stuff, and just getting back to just doing it strictly for the love of the game, man. That's what it should all be about.
And and just to be clear, listeners, I have really enjoyed this past year. It's been it's just been a hectic year on a personal level. I think that's where a lot of the distractions come from, where like I was dealing with, you know, my wife and I were trying to save up to buy a house. We did buy a house, and then going with the move and figuring out finances in the new place. And even that, I'm still like, you know, still trying to figure out like what our budgets are and stuff like that. Like there's just a lot of stuff that's been happening, and it's crazy because even with that said, like it's been one of the more successful years for the podcast. Like lots of like episodes surprised me. I've had some of my favorite episodes that I've recorded like this year. Lots of like some of the ones I get most excited for are the super niche episodes, and they do better than I expect sometimes. So that's always cool. So I don't know. I just say all that just not to say like I didn't enjoy this year. I actually really very much did, but I found myself this year just a little bit too in my own head, and not like just being present in the moment. And that's what I want to work on. But TJ, we got to wrap this up. I know your time is like you're already like a little bit past due when you wanted to head out of here. So I want to throw it over to you, my friend. Thank you for coming over here for once again, for you coming down from the Great White North. Thanks for stopping by and like hanging out for our annual yearly chats. It's always a good time, and just kind of reminisce and like just talk about some of our top episodes of the year. And I always enjoy that. So where can the good people find you online? And as per usual, what would you like to promote?
Well, thank you, man. And yeah, I got a long walk back. And I gotta work tonight too, so I got to get rolling and to walk back.
Surf on that maple syrup.
Yeah, surf back across the Great Lakes with, what did you say? A moose antler surfboard.
A surfboard made out of goddamn moose antlers.
Out of goddamn moose antlers. Yes. So just again, thank you. I appreciate you and your support and your friendship and everything. I know that we, haven't as much time to chat this year as much as we maybe have in the past, but it's always appreciated, and it's always like no time goes by, and that's why these are always so fun, man. So that's always great. Thank you very much to the listeners of the Still Learning podcast for putting up with my shenanigans for another year here as I join Josh for these year-end reviews. It's always a blast. If you have any interest in the horror stuff, you can find Tapes of Trepidation wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. And the hell's that other thing called? Threads.
Blue Sky.
I don't use
Blue Sky now.
I don't even know what the hell that is.
It's a Twitter replacement, pretty much, without Elon Musk.
Yeah, I thought that's what Threads was. I don't know. It's very confusing. There's too much out there. I'm just like, I'll stick with Instagram and Facebook. I'm old. It's all good. But as well as if you're into the Discord thing, that's probably the best way to keep up with me and everything I got going on with tapes, and also the Hodder Show. Same thing. All your the Hodder Show, all your different podcast platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. Yeah. If you're listening to this and you feel like listening to some Christmas stuff, the 12 scares of Christmas is probably over as you are listening to this. I will assume, because it's ending on the 25th, but content's still there. A lot of good stuff this year. And let's hope next time we have this conversation, I have some even cooler stuff to talk about. And, I look forward to it. And I feel like I'm just circling here. So yeah, just thank you. And thank you, Josh. I appreciate you. I always have a ton of fun coming hanging out with you. All right, guys, there you have it. The 2024 retrospective. And again, I know this is kind of weird because doing a retrospective for a podcast, it hasn't really been that active this year. But like I said in the episode there, the Hodder Show is still fun and everything. This isn't something that I stopped doing because it wasn't fun anymore or anything. I'm having a blast with tapes, and it is something that has been basically, really, if I'm being honest, as long as I've done this podcast, which is coming up on 9 years now, by the way, very soon, which is wild to think about. Actually, in 1 month, 1 month minus a day, will be the 9th year anniversary of the Hodder Show, which is wild to think about. But with as much as I'm having so much fun, and it's something I've always wanted to do, this podcast is still very important to me. And as I mentioned, scheduling interviews literally got to be impossible. So instead of me feeling like I was going to be half-assing things, I decided to just take a step away. And I kind of already did talk about that a little bit on the kind of the update I gave there back in July, which was really out of necessity because I felt like I owed you guys that. But explanations and all that out of the way, I got some cool stuff lined up this year. Some people I've already talked about the fact that I'm going to be doing an episode with them. Some music stuff coming, some author interviews coming. What else we got in the can this year? Some fellow podcasters and creators talking about some cryptids at some point, maybe. What else? Definitely some albums that made me. Sessions here you can expect this year, and just anything I do this year with the Hodder Show, I'm either going to have a blast doing the episode or I'm not doing it at all. So that is what you can expect from me this year here on this feed. I got something cool cooking for the 400th episode, which has been it's like a bad joke at this point because I was hyping that up back in like April, I think. But we're going to do some kind of a live thing with that. So I can't wait. I'm very excited. Gonna do something in the next couple of weeks. Don't know what it's going to be. I might just do a Ask Hodder Anything, just for those of you who will not be able to come off the live episode. Might do something along those lines, but we'll see kind of how the cookie crumbles. But I'm excited, man. It's going to be a great year, both in the Hodder Show camp and for Tapes of Trepidation, as well as for other things you're going to see me do this year from a creative standpoint. I'm really excited. And also just in life, got some cool stuff coming. So I'm very excited about that. And thank you to those of you who are listening to this right now, especially if you're still listening. Seriously, you're the best. Thank you very much. I wasn't really sure if anyone would care to see the Hodder Show come back, to be brutally honest with you guys. But enough people, reached out about it and asked about it. That's I'm like, you know what? There's people there who care. And one thing that I've really realized over the last year is how much content creation has changed, especially over the last year and a bit. It's very different from even this past year and a bit. I've seen and noticed things have changed a lot in regards to how content creation is done. And that's probably a theme. You're going to probably hear me talk about that over the next little while, because I'm not really a fan of it. But also it's like, I'm an audio podcaster, dude. So, that's completely beside the point, and I will talk about that another time. But I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. Thank you for sticking with me. And I hope you have a fantastic 2025. And the next time you guys hear from me, hopefully I'll sound a little bit better. I'm hoping I'm not going to be all kind of messed up and phlegmy. But we will see what happens. I'm probably going to be fighting this thing I got going. Basically, I got pneumonia. And I should be at the tail end of it by now, but it doesn't seem to just want to go away that last little bit. So I might sound a little weird over the next month or so, but we will see what happens. We're just going to kind of have fun here, and I'm going to do things when they're fun, man. And that's what it's all about. And that's what I hope you do too. Do things because they're fun, man. Just that's it. That's all I can say. Fun. Just fun, man. And I hope that you guys had fun with this episode and that you enjoyed it. Be sure to go check out my boy Josh from Still Learning Podcast if you are into gaming at all, especially if you're into kind of retro gaming and stuff like that. He does seriously a phenomenal job, and he's a wonderful dude, and I'm very proud to call him a friend. But with that, I'm going to sign off here today. Thank you guys so very much for sticking with me and for coming to hang out, and I'll catch you next time here on The Hodder Show. Take it easy, guys.